Tokyo, in an unusual episode that illustrates the delicate relations between Beijing and Pyongyang, North Korean leader Kim Jong Un has thrown down the gauntlet to a respected Chinese university. The University of Science and Technology of China, or USTC, on April 23 published a summary of the research, which noted that North Korea's underground nuclear test site in Punggye-ri near the Chinese border has already collapsed and is unusable. The North Korean leader had just stunned the world 3 days earlier by declaring the shutdown of the Punggye-ri site as well as a halt to nuclear tests and launches of intercontinental ballistic missiles. From Kim's perspective, the university's research threatened to undermine his game plan, as he prepared to negotiate the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. When Kim held talks on April 27 with South Korean President Moon Jae-in, he categorically rejected the conclusion reached by the Chinese scientists. During that historic inter-Korean summit, Kim told Moon that Pyongyang would close the nuclear test site by the end of May. He also pledged to disclose the process to experts and journalists from the U.S. South Korea. Kim flatly denied that he was merely shutting an unusable site, saying 2 new tunnels that are larger than previous testing facilities remain in good condition. Kim and U.S. President Donald Trump are to face off in the coming weeks, both seeking to come out of the first-ever meeting with a good deal. While Trump is author to business guidebook The Art of the Deal, 1987, it may be Kim that ends up making his counterpart overpay. Kim watches the launch of AHWASONG-12 missile in a photo released on September 16, 2017. Copyright KCNA via Reuters. USTC, China's top-level science university located in the Anhui province city of Hefei, conducted an analysis of North Korea's 6th and largest nuclear test held at the Punggye-ri site on Sept. 3, 2017, when the seismic wave of the nuclear test was detected. Another large wave followed just 8.5 minutes later, raising speculation of a second detonation. But this phenomenon resulted instead from a near-vertical 440-meter on-site collapse toward a cavity created inside a mountain at Punggye-ri by the massive nuclear explosion, the USTC research said. Based primarily on data from observatories at 1,972 locations, the university scientists made a detailed analysis of the seismic waves from mysterious small-scale earthquakes that occurred frequently near Punggye-ri. USTC determined that the site had collapsed and was unusable. It is necessary to continue to monitor any leakage of radioactive materials that may have been caused by the collapse, the team said. Yet in a bizarre development, the research summary was abruptly deleted from the university's website. Many initially saw Kim's April 20 declaration regarding Punggye-ri, carried by North Korea's state-run media the following day, as a concession ahead of his planned summit with Trump. Trump hailed Kim's move immediately and said on Twitter, "North Korea has agreed to suspend all nuclear tests and close up a major test site. This is very good news for North Korea and the world. Big progress. Look forward to our summit." But Kim's declaration that North Korea will not carry out a nuclear test may actually be a reflection of the fact that North Korea cannot carry out tests for a while, even if it wanted to. Furthermore, Kim has made no mention of North Korea's abandonment of nuclear weapons. He instead has referred to the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. This smartly worded expression is intended partly to win over China, which wants to counter the existence of U.S. military bases in South Korea. Kim apparently sees no problem having prolonged negotiations with Trump over the nuclear issue. He also could buy time by holding 3-party talks among the 2 Koreas and Washington. 4-party talks that also include China or the traditional 6-party talks that add Japan and Russia. While stalling for time, Kim may attempt to dig a new tunnel for a nuclear test in Punggye-ri or build another test site at a separate remote location. A source involved in Sino-North Korean relations and familiar with North Korea's internal affairs offered an explanation of the situation. Trump strongly called for tangible results ahead of this autumn's U.S. midterm elections, the source said. Kim Jong Un, who is aware of that, conveyed the early closure of the nuclear test site via Moon Jae-in. But if the nuclear test site is unusable in the first place, Kim's offer is nothing but a painless, feigned concession. People gather at Kim Il-sung Square in Pyongyang on July 6, 2017 to celebrate the test launch of an intercontinental ballistic rocket. Copyright KCNA via Reuters. The release of USTC's research was academic. Its removal was political. Kim Jong Un went out of his way to explain to Moon that the tunnels are still usable, a Chinese expert on diplomacy and security said. Chinese authorities probably saw USTC's announcement as a problem and ordered the university to delete it, giving priority to political consideration to Kim. In late March, Chinese President Xi Jinping finally shook hands with Kim for the first time when the North Korean leader visited Beijing in his first overseas trip since coming to power. The Sino-North Korean summit prevents China from being left out in the cold over the Korean Peninsula issue amid a spate of dramatic regional developments. In another diplomatic coup for Xi, a joint declaration from the Inter-Korean summit had both sides refer to four-party talks including the U.S. and China. Under such circumstances, the Xi regime apparently viewed the release of the research unfavorably as it hindered Kim's strenuous propaganda efforts. The University of Science and Technology of China remains familiar to anybody who remembers the student movements that flourished in China during the 1980s. The university produced Fang Lizhi, a physicist and dissident who was called China's Sakharov. In comparison to Soviet physicist and dissident Andrei Sakharov, Fang played a role in Chinese pro-democracy movements that led to the Tiananmen Square incident of June 4, 1989. In 1987, Fang was dismissed as the university's vice president, accused of instigating pro-democracy demonstrations that spread from USTC to various parts of the country. Around the same time, Hu Yaobang, the then Chinese Communist Party's general secretary, was also dismissed over alleged lax handling of the pro-democracy demonstrations. Even after his dismissal as the university's vice president, Fang served as an ideological and spiritual supporter of students calling for democratization. He took courageous action and wrote an open letter to then paramount Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping calling for the release of political prisoners. U.S. President George H.W. Bush visited China in February 1989 and invited Fang to a banquet at the American Embassy in Beijing. But Chinese authorities prevented Fang from attending the banquet, sparking an international incident. The Tiananmen Square incident was triggered by students mourning the death of Hu Yaobang in April 1989. After Tiananmen, Fang took refuge in the U.S. Embassy, and eventually left China for the U.S. Fang died in 2012 in Arizona. The younger generation of Chinese are not familiar with Fang or the things he stood for, as all relevant information has been blocked. The USTC research about the Punggye-ri nuclear test site has become famous, but few people will recall Fang. Yet even today, USTC retains the sincere stance toward scientific inquiry left by Fang. The university's Punggye-ri report has been received by Geophysical Research Letters, a journal of the American Geophysical Union. It still has life. The authoritative university marked Kim's fine trick and performance regarding the nuclear site with a question mark. During his summit with Moon, Kim eagerly rebutted the scientist's conclusion and gave his own explanation. Moon is expected to visit the U.S. as early as mid-May for talks with Trump, where he will brief the U.S. leader of North Korea's proposals. Trump prides himself on his expertise on negotiations. What will Trump's next move be?